Alrighty. I'm David from PhotoPixel, and let's pick up exactly where we left off on the last stream, pretty much. So I was about to hit the build button, or hit the confirmation for the build, and that build is finished. So now there is a build up. Link in the description, I believe. But you'll find it under there as command bots. I haven't actually got a screenshot. Let's put one on there, hey? That might be a good idea. Maybe just like a robot. Just for fun. Looks like chat is not connected properly here. Sorry if you've sent any messages. I will just get that. I find that closing and reopening that docs tends to fix it. Here we go. So here is the build that I pushed up. Full screen doesn't work properly. You won't get it'll maximize, but the game itself will only render to a small area. I haven't replaced that yet. So sorry about that if your resolution is high, because it might look awfully small. But there we are. That's the... I can't show you on full screen. But that's where it's at. Got the shield animation working properly, which I think you can see on this one. No, that one there. Animating that. I'll get the magnifier going again so that I can show stuff properly. And then I'll get back into it. But what I need to do here is... actually open this under a different browser profile so that it will work properly. And what do we got here? Random notification or something related to stream? I wish that people could solve the problem. Yeah, it is related to stream. Cool. For some reason, Samsung just doesn't want to solve the thing of being able to have notifications in, like, most recent at the top, so that when a notification comes in, you can actually just have a quick look and see that notification. That would be very, very nice. But instead, I need to make sure I'm aware of what time it is. And maybe that wasn't the greatest time to open the magnifier when I was just messing with this. But let's see. Yeah, here we go. Can go edit that and probably put a screenshot in here. And what have I got here? I mean, yeah, my command bots directory. And will it understand any of this? No. So just grab 13 is the robot. That'll do quite nicely as a thing. Can I paste as a new? What about I go way past here? Paste as new sprite. Wait, have I not got something? Oh, wait. Can I just grab maybe deselect? Okay, now I've just got that. Now, can I paste as new sprite? No? I don't know why that's not an option. $64 square. Yes. That works. Now, let's just call this something. Cover image, maybe. Let's cover image. And then just export, not sprite sheet. Just export as, what's the format of this? PNG. Yep, sounds fine. Export. Now this is where I was doing that. I didn't look at the recommendation just here. Required minimum 315 by 250. Recommended 630 by 500. Okay. Let us sprite size this to, let's just get it up to 500 high with resizing. We're using rot sprite. Let's try it. No, that does not look good. That looks all wiggly. So I'll do the same thing, 500 this time. I think we want nearest neighbor. So that'll just scale it up without destroying the pixel art. And now we just want to set the canvas size to be wider. And 630. And then we will be the recommended size. Center that. Okay. And finally, I will save it and export as PNG. Overwrite yes. And let's do the same thing again. Place with this one that is the recommended size. So now, if I go back, just grab that out of the stream for a second. Just a quick look at, just some builds. Bear with me one more moment. All right, here we are. So I can bring that back now. Yeah, that's just a quick thing before I get into the coding. Now we actually have a picture here. So if you go to that URL there, I should just aim for the middle of that camera. That works. Yeah, if you go there, command bots is what I'm working on. And that was the one I was working on before and need to get back to at some point. Right, enough of that. Time for some coding. Let's close that. Oh, and that. So goodbye, sprite. So last time I got that shield animation working properly, and I was working on sort of finishing up getting the parts on robots working properly. And so I'm just questioning if my audio is getting to my ears properly. Let's just assume it is. Oh, hello, Newman. I did see your message hopefully quicker this time. Yes. It only took me like 4 minutes or something this time. How are you doing this evening? Or, hang on, would it be evening there? Which way does the Earth go? You're that way from me. Sun comes up this way, so we're going this way. Yes, I guess early evening over there, right? It's later evening here. I was out and got back a bit late. That's why I'm in a bit late. I was tossing up what to do this time, whether to move on to adding sensors, which would allow this command, the routine, to instead of just being linear, to have branch points based on some input from a sensor. But I think I'll leave that till next time. And I think what I'll do this time is make a generic interface that the robot can use to talk to the parts. So I'll add a sensor after that, which I might have time for today, but I don't think so. So let's create an empty. Awesome. At some point, I will figure out how to get a sound happening when YouTube messages come in, because there must be a way, I'm sure. It's just how hacky is it going to be? That doesn't matter too much, except for the fact that it can take a while to set up. Even if I have to have something that's just like looking at this bit of the screen, and when any pixels change on that bit of the screen, it does something. That would do. Just show that there's some kind of activity there. Okay, so I'm going to say add sensors is like the next thing to do. And that will naturally require branching support in the routine. There is one other thing I can actually add without sensors that would allow some kind of interesting behavior on the routine, which is add like a go-to. Add like label and go-to actions. So that would basically allow you with the label to mark a point. Like you could say, okay, robot, I want you to, walk forward 3 times, and then you could pop a label here, and that would just like skip past the label, and then say, I want you to, fire the laser and step forward, and that's like the bit you want it to repeat. And then here you could put a go-to for that label, so it would be like a matching one. And so it, if there was only one available, it would just be like there's a point, and you can say loop back to that point. But there's a few different ways I could do that. It could be like just a generic thing where it's like label 1, label 2, label 3, and then you could have any number of them, or it could be that there are limited of those available. Like there's just like red, green, and blue labels, and like markers and red, green, and blue things. This is solo. So in my day job, I work in a team, and that's very different. It's a lot more. The pace is often slower. Hello, Hacker Hub. Welcome. So working with a team, the pace is often slower, and it's a different type of development because you kind of have to spend, still have to spend the time figuring out how to make the code work, and doing that thing and making the code like readable enough. But with a team, then you also have to spend extra time to make the code not only readable by like myself at my level, but also I have to kind of make the code written in a way where more junior devs are going to like not break anything, which can be a problem sometimes. Having people come in, see something they don't quite understand fully how it works, but some people will confidently go in and change code anyway, break something that's been working before, and there's a lot that I do in how I write code to protect against that, to make it clear what should or shouldn't be changed, to break things, like split things up more so that the sort of carefully put together don't touch these bits aren't actually anywhere near the parts that are going to be worked on by the broader team, and a whole lot of time on just coordination, especially the bigger the team, and I'm in a relatively large team at the moment. A lot of time spent on coordination. I'm pretty much just sick of that. Like I get plenty of that in my day job. I don't need any more of that in my hobby. So that's one thing. I need to move this magnifier across to there, don't I? Otherwise you can't see all of this. Oh yeah, the more senior you do, the you become. I mean, you either just become much faster at coding, or you become you take on more of a support role. So you're teaching other developers how to develop better, helping everyone write code consistently that will sort of fit well together. Doing a lot of reviewing code, which is a big part of how more junior devs can learn stuff, because you basically it works. It's basically you're going through the code and checking a whole bunch of things about it. I've got kind of a hierarchy I go through. So, most important top tier things to check are: is the code actually correct? Like, does it do what it's supposed to do? And is it secure and free of bugs? So that's kind of like the top tier most important thing. But then sort of next tier, is it adequately tested, which will basically prevent it from gaining bugs later that nobody notices because no tests failed when the bug was introduced. And a whole bunch of things about like making sure that the code is like generally readable so that it's not going to like slow the rest of the team down, passes any kind of automated tests and things that you've got. Well, that's usually a bar before you even submit the code. Yeah, a bunch of things like that. And then like the third tier is getting into like having good quality code that's not only going to not slow the team down, but will allow you to develop faster, that kind of thing. And like the fourth tier is just like stylistic preferences, where it's like, well, I prefer to write this way, but there's no strong argument one way or the other. And so, that's kind of like, it's easy to sort of spend the whole time in a review if you're not stepping back and thinking about it, in just writing feedback on that sort of fourth tier and third tier, and like go through and sort of review like how the code is written and forget to actually check, does this do what the ticket says it should do that's being implemented here? That's the other thing too. Like working on a team, you've got to have some kind of ticketing system to make sure people know what they're working on. If it's more than a couple of people, you've got to have some way to coordinate how you're working, and that tends to be a ticketing system of some kind. Also, sort of that helps with being able to track bugs, figure out if they're fixed, and that kind of thing. Yeah. Other things that I do as a senior dev are like integrating code that has conflicts, that's something that a lot of people seem to have trouble with getting Git to do what they want it to, possibly because they use it through UI like tools instead of like I started with it on a command line and sort of learnt more fundamentally how it works and played around with it before moving to using UIs for some things just because it's a little quicker to get to. But yeah, and what else? Just help. Like sometimes bugs will come up, and people will look at them and go, I don't know. And that's the kind of thing that I can get in and go and look at the code, read the code, even if it's bad, just figure out what it actually does, and that'll often get to the bottom of a bug that people have trouble with, have trouble figuring out. Yeah, and then if I let it happen, a whole lot of meetings. I usually tend to resist that because it doesn't, like some meetings are useful, but a lot of meetings are pretty much just a waste of time. Like there'll be things that lots of people are invited to, but you really only need like 2 or 3 particular people to go talk about it or that kind of thing. Yeah, but it can be extra work, by the way, depending on the work culture. But I tend to avoid that. I stay very strictly to my my amount of hours I'm meant to work. I have some flexibility in when I do those hours exactly, but basically I make sure that I always do the number of hours I'm being paid for, because I'm in a salaried position, the number of hours I'm being paid for, and not less than that, but not more than that either. So it means that I'm spending less time writing code than when I was earlier on in my career, more time helping other people to write good code. Ultimately means kind of, I could write, if I could write twice as much code, or the thing is, I don't even write more code than junior or non-senior devs. They tend to write more code than me because they don't usually spend as much time refining it down and like refactoring it, deduplicating, that kind of thing. Yeah, I usually I don't think I would necessarily get a lot of things written faster than other devs who are less experienced even. But I'll tend to write things that allow faster coding in the future because of how they're structured. And they don't tend to keep coming back for bug fixes. Sometimes you'll get developers join a team who they'll write lots of code, get through lots of tickets, but then you end up with like a whole bunch of extra tickets coming in with all the bugs that were introduced because, probably one of the main ways that they were able to go so quickly is that they haven't done the due diligence of making sure that they've written adequate tests for things. Checking that the code they've written is right, checking the code they've written is readable, because the less readable the code is, the more likely you can have bugs there that aren't obvious because you can't just tell just by reading the code exactly what it does. And it also, like, in addition to the time to fix those bugs, it also sort of introduces all this bad code that then slows the whole team down. So that's really frustrating when you have those situations. That's another senior dev job, really, pretty much. This is like at code review, just not going, having a cursory look and going, okay, we'll let that in. Just have that as a what it's supposed to be. That's another big role of it, in addition to teaching. It's just like that is the point at which bad code should not be allowed into the system. And so, if they're driven to move fast, change the equation so that the only way to move fast and get tickets in is to write the code well. And it ends up just being slower if you have to go through like 5 rounds of review, because the actioning of the feedback from the review was rushed and therefore missed. But that's where keeping it, like I mentioned before, there are four tiers that I look at with code review. If something's not even meeting the first tier of doing what it's supposed to, I try not to move into the lower tiers with the review. I'll just give the feedback about what needs to change to sort of meet that first tier, and then let them go and fix that, because the tiers below that are going to be, that kind of has to wait until the code's doing what it's supposed to. Then you can see if the code is structured well and that kind of thing. So yeah, that's sort of one, like there are different ways to be a senior dev, but those are a lot of the kind of things that are expected. I guess some of the things I'm talking about are also sort of covered by principal software engineer, and like it depends where you are. Like I think, yeah, I'm the most senior dev on like my side of the team. There's sort of back end and front end of the team, so I'm the most senior dev on the front end of the team. And there I think there's like a couple of other devs who are in senior positions, but I'm the most senior. I don't think anybody there is like the principal engineer. And so, yeah, a lot of the things that I do are also in that area of the difference between a senior and a principal is essentially principal software engineer is basically hopefully will be more senior, but also this is a broader expectation of sort of also making like technology decisions and steering the whole development in the right way, whereas a senior dev may or may not be doing that, depending on how many senior devs there are and what their role is. The project I'm on at the moment, it was, by the time I joined it, everything was fairly locked in as far as the broad technology and architecture, but I've been slowly massaging the architecture into something that's more maintainable as I go. Much harder to do in a team when you've got other people working on stuff, and in like a working system that's already sort of all up and running, being deployed to places, because you can't just like rip the whole thing apart and put it back together slowly. By the time you get that done, you're going to be trying to integrate that back into a system that's had a whole bunch of changes since you started. All right, let me get back into this. So what I want to do, I don't even know if I got as far as finishing saying that. What I want to do today, or tonight, in the fairly quickly dwindling time I've got, is to make a generic interface. I don't know if generic is the right word here, just a general interface for parts, or probably interacting with parts. There we go. And the reason I didn't say generic is because a generic interface would be an interface that takes a type, like one or more type arguments, so that the interface can act on different types. And that's not what I want here. That'd be something like an array, which can have an interface for all so collection interface, and then you could have an array of something. Yeah, I won't go into generics. If someone is in the middle of learning them, then I'm welcome to. Yeah, always okay to not be sure, Newman. Yeah. Yeah, there are so many things to learn. Like I'm making games right now, but when I was studying, I did like software architecture, web development, and some game AI. I got the highest grades in game AI, so you can tell what was the most fun. And like I can use the stuff that I learned there to sidestep into all kinds of other things if I want to. Yeah, like because anything that you learn is going to be obsolete probably by 5 or 10 years. Not like completely obsolete, but any framework you learn, the other things come along. I don't know how long Unity is going to be worth developing in. Maybe 20 years, maybe 2 years. Other things will come along that are better. So you're always learning new things and changing. So I don't think there's a problem. And really, the other thing about which path is best, it depends what you like doing. Like blockchain doesn't interest me very much. So I don't do it. The fact that I'm not very interested in it would mean it would be a big bunch of struggle to work on. It can be worth just like this may not be true of everyone, but there's more to life than just what you do for your job. So like I've got a family, got friends, I've got things I want to do other than work. When I was younger, I had more time to just spend on work because I had fewer responsibilities, fewer drains on my time. But yeah, at the end of the day, whatever you do for work, the fact that you're doing it for work kind of can make it more tedious, less fun, and it's not healthy to like put too much into work. It's very easy to get kind of caught up in because of the amount of time you're spending on it, sort of feel like work is the most important thing. But it's like it's just what gives you money at the end of the day, and you can find things to do that you enjoy and that you find rewarding. But I have a point, I'm sure, but what was it? Yeah, so don't stress too much about that, but think about what lifestyle you want outside of work. That's something that's probably the advice I would give to my younger self, which I think my younger self was doing, so I would add to that. Think about what lifestyle you would like outside of work into the future, and make sure you don't make assumptions. Like, don't assume that a particular career path or job will support that lifestyle. And I don't just mean how much money you want to earn. I mean, like, how much time freedom do you have? There'd be some jobs where you tend to be on sort of a bunch of shifts and not have a lot of control over what hours you're working or not. Like doctors, I think that's kind of a bit all over the place if you're working in hospitals and things. But if you're a GP, it's probably a lot more consistent, that kind of thing. So it's like how much money you earn, how many hours will you actually end up having to work, how many hours will you have to end up having to do other things to support working. So you might have a 40-hour work week on paper, but everybody does 50 hours, and it's hard to push back against that. And you've got to spend a certain amount of time learning stuff and personal grooming and that kind of thing to be able to be in that role. Like I'm sure to be a lawyer, you can't just like get out of bed, roughly brush your hair, and throw on a dressing gown and go into work. If you're a programmer and you work from home, maybe you can wear a dressing gown. Maybe you can just do that and get to work. Just depends. And then, yeah, how much flexibility will you potentially have with time? You know, will it be strict 9 to 5 or something that you have to stick to? Will it be the kind of thing that you can just, you know, start and finish whenever you want, as long as you're doing enough hours, or the kind of thing that you can just like knuckle down on, do for 3 weeks, and then take a couple of weeks break? All these kind of different things, and that might not be straightforward to find out exactly what the lifestyle is like, but I would say that's really worth doing if you're considering going and doing something. Try and get in contact with some people who are actually in that career and find out things about, like, you know, how much free time they have, what are frustrations that they have, and so on. So yeah, that's really a lot broader than just like different development areas, but like just for now, I think you're fine to just learn programming, because you need the fundamentals to be able to do any of those things. And even if you do one thing for a while, you're not going to be locked into that. So yeah, and like experience that's in programming, even if it's not the same type of programming, you can still take that to interviews for other things. Like it still shows that you know how to, you know, write code, do a project, potentially like you know, I could take this that I'm working on now and, you know, get a game released and take that to any programming sort of interview process. It's just like, you know, here's a thing that I made, and, you know, I started doing it. I took it from start to finish, and you know, lessons I learned and so on. It's all coding. It's all and I guess this is like a solo project, so I'd be more likely to bring this to somewhere where I would need to be working largely on my own versus working in a team. You know, just pick the most appropriate things. But yeah, so like if I had to choose out of that list for myself, it'd be like number one, game dev, except it might be challenging to get a decent income. So it's like not a great fit in a typical game dev role for me, just with my financial obligations at the moment. And probably second would be web dev, but that's really just because that's what and I mean, I'm very specifically in like front end web development with like React and TypeScript, and I could probably go get another job within a week or something in that area if I wanted to, because there are jobs there at the moment, and that's one of the reasons why I'm doing that for my day job right now. I would, of course, switch to game dev in a heartbeat and do that full time if I could, you know, cover all my expenses with it. So, yeah. But yeah, I'd say like once you're comfortable that you can program reasonably well, then you'll probably be in a much better place to think about specializing in different things. And you might find that you enjoy something that, like, it's good to try a bunch of different things, because you probably find things that you enjoy that you wouldn't really have thought of. Like, I love making dev tooling, and I would never have thought of that. Like, it doesn't sound on like just the way I would describe it to myself. It wouldn't sound like that interesting a thing, but I just really love it. And got to stop myself from spending too much time doing it and not getting my code written. if it's kind of one of the things I've got to check myself on. So anyway, I hope that answers that question. No simple answer because it's just whatever you're interested in, whatever's going to motivate you. I would say the more interested you are in what you're doing, the easier it is to kind of keep up and reach a high level of knowledge with it. So if you find something really boring, then it might choosing that is choosing a difficult path. I think I have ADHD, so for me that's like doubly or triply or quadruply true. Following where my interest is a very effective way for me to be a lot more productive. So get to know how your mind works as well, and don't take my advice if it doesn't make sense for you. Yeah. All right. Let me try and get this code written before I run out of time. So yes, what does this mean? General interface for interacting with things. So basically, right now, here we go. Yep, robot. If it wants to block, it has to do some specific things. It's looking for shields specifically. So the robot has to know that the block action is something that shields do. And it's like seeing if there are any shields that are intact by looking for a shield component. And then it's going through those and checking that is broken. And then returning if any are intact. That's when it's checking if it should just malfunction instead of trying to do the action. But here, when we're starting an action and there's an action, it's a bit better with. So it doesn't just do one thing to block. Like it has to know something about each of these actions. It can't just say, I want to activate whatever component is on my left arm. Or it can't just say, like, the routine's saying do this action. I'm just going to dispatch that to all of my parts and have them figure out what to do. And I think at some point I probably do want to make it so that, well, I'm even considering replacing most of the main actions here with something that instead is like activate dismount point. So like activate left arm, activate right arm, and so on. And then this, that's how the actions would be saved. But then the way they appear here is based on whatever part is attached. I can't just pop that open because the game is not running. But basically, if you've got a laser on the left arm and then you go, yep, laser, but then you swap that to a shield, then that would become block because that's what happens when you activate that part. So basically, the robot has to know about all of these actions, and it even has to know special things like how to fire a laser. And so it needs to know that it needs to look particularly for a laser gun. And it's actually just looking for, like, in all of its children. So that means any mount point that you can put a laser on, it'll have that, and it'll fire all of the lasers at once. So yeah, basically, this is not a good way to do this because it means every single time I add any type of action, I've got to update the robot. And that is violating the single responsibility principle in a big way. So basically, this robot should be responsible for roboting. It shouldn't be responsible for doing what parts do. That should be the job of the parts. So basically, what I need is a way for the robot to basically just say, okay, whatever part is on this mount point, I don't need to know what the part is. I just communicate with that part, and it'll need to be able to tell the part to activate. It'll need to like check whether the part is working or broken, which it can already do with a shield. Shield. And it'll probably need to be able to like tell like it'd be good for it to have a way to tell if a part is currently in the middle of an action or if it's like finished an action. Whether it's idle at the moment might be interesting to know. But yeah, essentially so that then the parts can be attached. And then once the routine is updated to be more generic, even here, just if like the leg parts would need to be able to handle rotating the whole robot, which the way that I've got this put together right now wouldn't particularly wouldn't work too well. But yeah, I can figure out how to make that work. But yeah, essentially this should be just something like, for this action, just send that action to all the parts and let them sort it out. And then once the action is more like representing activate a particular mount point, then it would be even simpler. It would just be whatever mount point that says to activate, send the activate signal to that mount point. Maybe with a check first that says ask the part if it's broken, and just do the malfunction if it's not. If it is, otherwise send it that action, and then some way for that action to then communicate back when it's finished happening, so the robot can then get that signal and then go to the next stage of the routine. So that interface is what I'm looking to work on, and I've actually already got this simple activatable part, which is a mono behavior, and that's not an interface, it's a class. But it's like an interface is kind of like, it's not a class, but classes can implement it, and then you don't need to know which class you've got. And this is something that should belong on that interface, I think. So interfaces in C#, interfaces and classes, you can put multiple in one file. It's not always great for keeping code organized. Sometimes it's good. But an advantage is you can kind of define your interface or class or subclasses in the same file while you're writing them, so it's convenient, and then just do an automated refactor to move them to their own file. So, I think I've already got something called RoboPart, so let's just put a letter I in the front for interface, and this is my RoboPart interface. And so far, it's just an empty interface. Yeah, so this is basically, this is the interface for the robot to communicate with parts, mounted parts. So, yeah, the analogy would be if this were physical robots that were being built with parts that could click on, it'd be like, what is the shape of the connector that the parts connect onto, and what, like, where does the power get fed in at that mount point, and where can the signals get sent, which plugs to the signals go through, and then you make all of the parts that can connect compatible with that, and then they work. So that's basically what this is. Something, the parts implement this interface, and this interface is basically a promise that they will have certain things. So I promise that there will be a function, or a method rather, on every iRobopart that has an activate function that returns nothing, that doesn't take any arguments. So that's basically implementing this interface means you promise that you're going to have that. And so far, that's the only thing you promise. I think I put that just there. So now this is already a valid iRobopart because it has got the activate method. But what else am I going to need? So just the stuff I was just talking about. So robot to activate. Check if they're broken. But tell robot. The activation is finished. I also probably need some way for the part to move or rotate the robot. That's just for legs, basically. Oh, actually, not just for legs. Also, for weapon has got a recoil. Or if you had something like a jetpack, that would launch you, or something like that. Or like, yeah, booster. Booster pack, I'm imagining, is like a backpack that can do a burst of forward speed. So that's interesting. I think that might be a way that might be handled by like applying forces. To rigid body of a robot. I think they're fully kinematic right now, meaning that they're controlled by the script, not by physics. Yeah, but like script and animation. So we've got a collider. Here we got a rigid body. Yeah, kinematic rigid body. So that basically means so static, it doesn't move. You just use this for like a building. It's not going to get its movement updated at all. So you can just sit there and be collided with by other things, that kind of thing. Dynamic means that it's part of the physics simulation. So no, kinematic is also part of the physics simulation, but it's only an input to the physics simulation. So yeah, dynamic means that the physics simulation is going to control the position of this thing, applying things like friction, taking its mass into consideration in collisions, things like that. And inertia, tendency to keep moving in the direction it's moving. Gravity will be applied when appropriate. That kind of things. But yeah, kinematic means basically it's my job to move the robot because physics is not going to. So yeah, if basically it's kind of simpler to get them to move where I want them to with kinematic rigid bodies, but ultimately I think it would be it would end up better if I switch them to being dynamic without gravity being applied and with friction from the ground. It's not 3D, so they don't really get friction from the ground, but it would just be dynamic friction anyway. And because then they can do things like apply a force to an enemy with a projectile, or bump into an enemy and actually have them bump back without me having to animate bumping back. That kind of thing. So yeah, I think that might be a way to do it. It changes how you need to move things, but I don't think that's an issue. It's just something that happens. This is going to be 100% talking and not writing any real code stream, I'm starting to feel. Oh well. Sometimes planning is good. I try to plan things in between streams when I can, so that I can do more coding during that time. But yeah, so we've got that. What else can a part possibly do? These are like, some of these things are future stuff. Like at some point I want the robots to have a particular internal energy generation, so they'll have like whatever generator generating a particular output, and capacitors or batteries to store that energy. And then whatever parts they've got, coupled with whatever the routine is, means that they'll potentially start to run low on energy. So then when they need to fire the laser, they might need to wait until it finishes charging up enough power, because they already drained too much energy with the other things they were doing. So it's kind of part of the at the moment you can attach parts, so there's that system, but there'll be the upgrade system that lets you upgrade their amount of hit points, like by upgrading their armor, battery capacity, energy generation, I think just size, make them bigger, maybe even give them more attachment, like more mount points at some point, by switching to a bigger chassis, allowing different sized parts. I haven't even got that kind of concept. That might be going a bit far with this game, because it sort of starts to move too far away from the core concept which is having them pre-programmed in the factory with routines that you make, which will not look linear by the time I've gotten through a few sections here. I'll actually just add one more thing there, because that is the natural next thing, which is add support branching in the routine. So that would be more like having the routine take up more space and be like a non-linear flow that could start to get pretty complicated, since that's kind of the core feature of the game. I do want that to end up being able to do quite a lot more. But I'll just do a general run. Draw energy, like consuming energy. Potentially do other things too, actually. If they suddenly drain too much energy, then that could sort of do something to the robot. Oh, it could do things like repair. Etc. So there's sort of a set of other interactions with the robot. So I don't have to get all of these in the interface right now, but okay, so the robot can activate oh, that's not an actual space, it's just the thing for two references. So the robot activates the part. I think in the shield, as a simple activatable part, it also has this is broken. And I might rename that. Well, not rename it. I might put something different in the interface. But here, check if it's broken. And I think that's going to be the opposite. And instead of if it's broken, it can check if it's functional. This interface is a good place to document these things properly so that then I get info when I'm using them later, hints. So yeah, just whether the part is still able to function. Not destroyed. Parts could also possibly be like on cooldown if it's something that has to charge up. Oh, it might even be like yes, activatable. Because that's like doesn't necessarily mean it's destroyed. If it's not activatable, because it might be like on cooldown. Not like destroyed or on cooldown. So basically, when it comes time to activate a part, if it's not activatable, that's when the robot could possibly malfunction. I might actually change the signature of this. There are a couple of ways I want to change the signature, so I wanted to take an action so it can decide whether to do it. I can like check if it's appropriate. So basically that means what I mean by if it's appropriate is that an action that's relevant to this part. Like it's a walk forward action. I'm a laser. Don't care. That's fine. So you can just send that action and it would just do nothing because it's not the right type of action. Not even successful actually. Like I was thinking of like a Boolean, true or false. Like true if the activation was successful, false otherwise. And that way, then if you try and activate something that is not activatable, then you could kind of have the robot just try to activate. If it gets false back, then it will do the malfunction action. But that's probably not a great idea. Just because then what if it's not a relevant action to the part? It's like it shouldn't malfunction if it didn't activate, but it wouldn't be accurate for it to say that it had activated. But activation status, that's not a thing that exists yet. But if I return an activation status, then I can have 3 different statuses. It could be activated, not relevant, like just incompatible action for this part, or like broken or cooling down. Didn't activate. It failed. So I could make an enum that has those in it, and that's what it would return. So yeah, why don't I do that now? Wait, we're in the right place. That's not how you spell enum. There we go. Extreme still live. Yep, good. What am I going to call this? It's a part activation status and possible values. Yeah, I think success or activated. That means it worked. Probably like an error of some kind. I could probably have like broken or cooling down like as separate things, like not ready, meaning it's activated. It's like successfully started its action. Not ready, but did not start its action because it is like not ready, which is either like on probably on like charging or on cooldown. Or whatever. So not ready implies it could be ready, but it is not right now. Like it was not when the activation was attempted. Okay, then this is the one for like if it's broken. And there's just lots of different ways that could be like failed, broken, or destroyed. Let's see, the part is damaged beyond being able to function. Interesting. Anyway, I think not ready and just like complete failure. I'll just say failure. And it's like destroyed. Oh, yeah. Similar to above, part did not start this action because it's like broken in some way. Okay, and final thing is like incompatible, which basically just means part did not start the action because it is not an action for this. It's not a compatible action type. So, yeah, asking a set of legs to fire a laser, or asking a laser to move forward. Not compatible. Okay, so I've got these things. That's what will get returned when you do activate. This had better be a public or similar enum. There we go. And yep, not destroyed or on cooldown, charging. That's what we want. And all the rest of it is like stuff to have the part interact back with the robot. What is happening right now with the robot when it... Yep, getting that error down there because I've updated the interface but have not updated this to work. It's not returning one of these from there. Anyway, what's happening with like block? There's no motion, it's just taking the time. Yeah, cool. So basically, block, shoot laser, they're not actually doing anything anymore. All those are doing is keeping it from being idle, because that's how I have it checking whether it needs to do its next action yet. So yeah, that's where it's at right now. So what was my point of looking at that? Yeah, it's related to this thing, telling the robot when the activation's finished. So basically, I should be able to replace all of these things with something that just waits a certain amount of time. But I would like actions to be able to take different amounts of time. Everything's 1 second in here, and that's just to keep it pretty simple. But like during early prototyping, but I don't think that's necessary. Something might take 5 seconds and charge up and do a big shot. Other things might just be a quick little thing. It'd be good to have block for different durations. So to be able to say, yeah, I want to block for 10 seconds, and then it'll just hunker down for that long and do its thing. So basically, I need a way for parts to be able to take different amounts of time to do actions, and then when the action is finished, have it be able to tell the robot, okay, get on with it, I'm done. It'd be possible to make like a property on the parts, and every frame the robot could just check with all the parts, are you in the middle of an action? And if they are, then it just won't start a new one, and if they're not, then that would be the signal to start a new action. But I think, I'm sure I can do it in a more sophisticated way. Like one of the options also would be when it activates, not just return an enum, but maybe return a struct that has like this enum value, but might also have some other values in it. Like it might have how long should the robot wait for this activation to be complete. Although that would mean that parts always have to know when they first activate how long the activation is going to take, which might not be great constraint to have, because maybe they've got something that they do that takes a different amount of time depending on the situation. So yeah, I definitely want some way for it to kind of report back. And so it'd be nice for it to happen through this interface. Or maybe I just need an interface the other way that the part can talk to the robot through, because every part will only be attached to a single robot. So it'd be quite possible for a part to get a reference to its robot at the time it's attached, and just call something in that robot. But I'm thinking maybe here we could just have the robot passed in as an argument to the part, and then that way that's when this is called, that gives it the robot that it should report back to. It'll never be a different robot. Probably overthinking that at this point. Another option is that when activate is called, the robot could pass in a coroutine that could be activated, something like that. Does that even make sense? I'm not sure. I need to do another deep dive at some point on C# coroutines. So yes, how will the tell the robot when the activation is finished? I don't know at this point. I'll save that one. Solve that one later. And this is just like other things. That's could do sometime. That's. I think for these reasons, there's other reasons for the parts to have a reference to the robot in some way. And these things are like, yeah, stuff that could potentially be communicated back from this activate call, but that means everything would have to happen straight away instead of potentially over time. So I think we'll probably assume for the moment that the part will have a reference to the robot, and the robot doesn't need to tell its own parts which robot it is during these particular calls. Okay. I don't think I even need this actually. So like at the moment the robot has to check is broken to tell if it should malfunction instead of trying to activate the shields. But that activation status actually solves that. So I don't think we even need that. Not right now anyway. Yeah, because just if it gets back activated, then it can go, okay, I'm in an activated state for this mount point. And then as long as the mount point can somehow report back. Okay. And actually I could implement that right here, right now. So basically, interesting. Could actually return multiple values too. I was just thinking if this was able to like yield multiple results, then it could just yield like the status at first, and then later on it could yield like that it's finished. Anyway, that's not what we're doing here. This, I think, on that simple activatable part, is going to return I have to part activation status dot activated. So that's just a simple part that never fails. And it also needs to be same signature. Says it's returning void, and I've got it returning something other than void. There we go. Cool thing here now is that the shield won't need is broken anymore. But it will need to like override this. So that should inherit that interface. Okay, so it's saying you can't override it because basically this is not overridable. I think virtual is what I want. Do you tell me anything here about virtual? No, let's just have a quick look out of interest. So we're just going to have a look at like C# virtual versus like override and so on. Sure, let's look at the virtual keyword. So I think this means can be overridden. So the virtual keyword is used to modify a method, property, index, or event declaration to allow for it to be overridden in a derived class. For example, this method could be overridden by any class that inherits it. There, because it's got virtual on it. So yeah, that's the one. So basically, we make this virtual, and that just says this could be overridden. And then we go here, and we override it. We don't have an animator, so we can't do that. But here we're going to actually go like call its own is broken method. And if it's broken, then part activation status dot failure. So that failed, and otherwise we're actually just going to return the result of calling the parent of the super. What is C#'s thing? Should get that browser open. All right, I want C# call super method. Base is what I want. Referring to the base class. So basically, accessing members of the base class from within a derived class. So I want to call a method on the base class that has been overridden by another method. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm going to minimize this so I don't keep trying to go reopen it. Yeah, so basically it's like, and that's even, I'm going to move this up here. and move that there and change that to not. If it's not broken, then I want to just do the base class activate. It's going to do the activate action and then something else. It'll return the other thingy. The success activated, but otherwise it's going to do failure. And actually, is that all it's going to do? We don't want to actually play that animation. Yeah. So yeah, let me just like do I want that? Invert the if. Let's try invert if. If it's broken, return failure, and otherwise it's going to return base to activate. That seems good. And is broken is, in this case, it's just looking for hittable objects in its children. And if they're there, yeah, it doesn't find any, that's broken, or if the hit points are at or below 0, that also counts. Are these unused? I can tell when they're right next to other things, but it's a little bit subtle. Otherwise, I'm going to close that there. Close these animations that I was hand fixing before. All right, so now that Shield is both implementing that interface and doing that, so now that Shield is like the only part that's doing that. But let's see what we can do with the robot here. I think we're doing start action. Oh, I thought I had a message for someone, but it's just an advert for viewers. Well, it's something. I don't know. I need to finish up basically in a moment. Or probably should have finished up already by now. So yeah, I guess this stream has just been declaring that interface and kind of planning this stuff and talking about coding and being a senior developer and what that is about. But anyway, where was I looking at here? This is can perform action. So I don't think I even will need can perform action anymore. So I'll just put a note here. Oh, unless my system's just locked up. No, there we go. It was just taking its time. Basically change to call activate on each part and only malfunction if if there are no activated responses. Yeah, that's kind of it actually. Even if it gets like an activated and like broken response, that's still fine. If it gets only a broken one, that's sort of no different than if it doesn't get any activated based on the current behavior of can perform actions, basically. Yeah, it's like, does it have the part doesn't even probably need to check that. Just tell RoboParts activate with this action and then let them figure it out. So yeah, the robot won't even need to know necessarily. So yeah, it'll be like IE. There we go. Okay, I better wrap the stream up here because I need to consistently rest so that I can heal some damage to my body because I'm for some reason not invincible. Don't know who is responsible for that, but they're fired and I'm not going to rehire them. Somebody in the deciding how humans work department. Possibly a deity or something. I don't know. Anyway, not happy. I wasn't even doing anything ridiculous. I wasn't even jumping down off something or what have you. I was just doing completely regular, normal stuff while carrying multiple people at once. That's just regular, normal human stuff, isn't it? So we should have been designed to handle that. Anyway, I'm off. I've been David from PhotoPixel. Have a play of the prototype there. Come and watch the next stream. Let me know what you thought. Or leave comments on the prototype, and I will eventually notice them. I promise. I always notice comments sooner or later. That's not always true. But you would have believed my lies if I hadn't told you. Anyway, I'm